Welcome to your magic moon message. This is the peace dealer. Moon is in Gemini and the sun is in Virgo, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the completion of most faded and controversial Virgo season. And as the moon, of course, enters Gemini, we will see throughout the media a literal media storm, an information storm. We're starting, of course, this transit with the moon conjunct Gemini, or rather the moon in Gemini conjunct Uranus, which kind of rules unexpected events, unexpected upheavals, revolutions, technology, lightning, but in the context of this, very radical ideas. And given that this is a very mutable and adjustable, perspective, there is a storm of perspective that's going to adjust and shape how we're going to push forward coming into Libra season. I'm going to use this recent assassination as an example. Everyone had their idea of who was responsible, and maybe what's the idea behind the play. Now, once the moon went into Gemini, information has dropped. Like we anticipated, the moon in Gemini is going to give more information and understanding to wrap up the issue. But now ideas are beginning to change. People who thought they may have been on one side, or you have people arguing over what side this person is, or they thought it could be related to this, or they thought, this person might be a certain age, and all of this is just going to really stimulate so much more radical discourse. And even outside of the assassination, like all the issues currently in the world, and especially personally for you. So definitely look forward to that. It's going to really test, given the sextile to Saturn, how easily you get caught up in distraction and how easily you get caught up on talking points that sound very meaningful, speak to a whole lot of people, connect with them in their hearts, but they're not saying anything. They're not really saying anything relevant to anything. And such sophistry and persuasive elements could really distract you. Once again, now the sun and moon are immutable signs. So we are adjusting our perspective. And once we kind of are square, 270 degrees square on that, we're going to apply that relative to how we're going to feel about what's happening when the moon goes into Cancer, with which over Jupiter, feelings will amplify. So we're going to get ready. Guys, buckle up. This is what I meant when I said the rest of the year is about to be insane. We're having this moon conjunction to Uranus, trine Pluto. Then we're going to have the moon conjunction to Jupiter. So everything that we're thinking, which is going to spark a lot of radical discourse, is going to amplify. People are going to feel more powerfully about their feelings. Then the moon is going to oppose Pluto in Leo. Then we're going to have the new moon, a partial eclipse in Virgo. So the rest of this week, all in next week, buckle up, guys. And a lot of this is going to be relative to how does society want to perceive these current events. And now the moon in Gemini is giving us an understanding of what is happening so that it can adjust how we are analyzing, the details and subsequently the meaning of everything that's happened. Okay, so getting that out the way. The moon conjunct Uranus is very significant because every 28 days for the rest of the decade, up until 2032, we will have a moon Uranus conjunction in Gemini. It's going to retrograde back into Taurus, so we'll have a few more moon Taurus Uranuses. But every 28 days when the moon conjuncts Uranus in Gemini, we are activating a greater understanding of radical thought and radical thinking. This is what's going to make the discourse online, as Uranus will relate to technology like social media, so much more crazy, so much more rage baity, even in your real life talking with people. It's a good and bad thing tied to Pluto and Aquarius, which is showing how humanity is more unhinged and snapping, but also tapping into these revolutionary elements to promote change in a positive and or negative way, anywhere from demonstrations that are peaceful to very violent riots, which are all a part of the process. Whether they're good or bad, these are all a consequence of the past 250 years that has pretty much got us to this point. So knowing where you fit in will enable you to align your actions with integrity instead of getting caught up in the pointless rhetoric of people who want to agitate and stir opinions. Unless you're meant to do that, or you're meant to align with that, you'll know because it's authentic to you. And that's where you don't want to get too concerned about how right or wrong what you're doing is versus how authentic versus inauthentic it is. Like, are you just agreeing because you don't want to be seen as like a bad person versus is this what you're contributing to the situations that you're seeing? So the trine of Pluto is not only taking this innovation of Uranus, but it's now integrating this extraordinary supernatural Plutonian depth that takes our higher mind and now radicalizes with Uranus how we put this into words, opening different, deeper layers of discourse and expanding the broader range of now how even alien disclosure and cosmic elements intertwine with all of this. The most diabolical thing about this, however, is, of course, now that we are reactivating this Moon Uranus Gemini, it's going to square in Virgo, and then we're going to see what everything we're activating means in 2 weeks. So when the moon is in Sagittarius, that's where we're going to come into a much higher understanding and perspective of what this current information we're coming into now unexpectedly means. And that's where a lot of this discourse is going to, with the nodes in Pisces, really start to connect to a much deeper, broader influence relative to your personal life, relative to social events that are happening right now. And as we close out this Virgo season, this is going to prepare to really now expand your perspective in a way that accounts for the past 6 months of major development when it comes to making your beliefs real, with which we're doing now in Virgo. So we had the new moon 3 weeks ago. We harvested it through the full moon a week ago, and now we're completing it over the next 2 days. We activated new habits. Then the moon went into Sagittarius, and we came into a meaningful understanding of how we see our habits forming. Then we had the full moon in Pisces, which changed our beliefs in order for them to match our habits. And now we're concluding with the moon in Gemini, that's going to give us an intellectual understanding of what to communicate and what to think about these new habits. So the completion of these behaviors is your ability to communicate it, to now have it rewire your thinking. And this is going to be done radically so. Even more so, because this entire transit is based off of a Sun conjunct Saturn in Pisces cycle 6 months ago. This is the completion of habits you've been forming since 30 years ago. Some of you aren't even 30 years old, okay? This is starkly different from next year's Virgo season, where by this time next year, the Sun will have conjuncted Saturn in Aries and Uranus in Gemini. So that's forming a new habit based on this new world cycle, versus this, which is now completing the nature of your habits, ending an old world cycle. So many of you will fail if you are expecting too much from yourself and you are being hard on yourself for not necessarily meeting goals, when this is really more so like after the final exam. This is really just to see how you are right now to prepare you for next year, March of 2026, and the rest of the next year, which is now going to prepare you to activate this new contract, activate this new cycle, step into this new world. The rest of the year, we're phasing out the old world. And if you understand that, then you'll appreciate, of course, what is happening and what's to come. I'm saying that because you don't want to necessarily get stressed about seeing too dramatic of a change, especially with Saturn retrograded back in Pisces, delaying these major changes in order to adjust your belief systems to match with your habits, which is very important. And this level of consistency, commitment, commitment and discipline can be discouraging if you're not seeing quick results versus seeing this as a long-term thing, where Virgo season is just to establish the habit, and you're going to spend the rest of the year maintaining these habits. We're going to apply these habits in Libra season to our relationships, and the focus there will be on, okay, what are we doing with these new behavioral patterns and with who? Please also remember, people are more insecure than ever. So, name calling and all sorts of projection of what they're uncomfortable with you about will continue to happen. But you're going to see now miraculous turnarounds where your integrity of maintaining, your own confidence and you standing on what you represent, you're going to now be breaking through and completing how this changes the perspective socially, and how now the lack of authenticity and others projecting on you now turns back on them, because they were never operating sincerely. They were never really operating based on anything in reality, just projecting on you their feelings. All right. Which, as much as others may try to manipulate in order to manipulate you, now, because you've maintained these habits which respect your value, and you don't let people, treat you as less than you are, you'll really experience the completion of this process, this work you've done to establish this. Hurt people, but some people are just SLBs, they're WLBs, and misery loves company. So as you break through and complete this transit, there will be an unconscious sense of cognitive dissonance as others begin to see you succeed and thrive, where they may kind of hope you fail, and not in a hater type of way, where it's singling you out like, I want this person to fail, but just, certain remarks, certain comments, certain behaviors. Remember, this is about shifting your behavior. So you're going to really be seeing the truth around certain people's behaviors towards you, in support or against what you do, and just believe what they tell you the first time. A lot of people mask these things with, language or faces. But you're going to be seeing it clear as day. So you do with that information as it's revealed what you will. But remember, all this, we're going to apply the shift of your behavior towards now what you do with it in relationships with others once we step into Libra season. And this is where you'll continue to demonstrate the efficacy of strategies, techniques, and behavioral patterns that you've mastered throughout the past 6 months, and you've established over the past 2 years. The I told you so tours are real, cannot be debunked, and no one has found the burden of proof or fulfilled the burden of proof against. So now they're just mad. That's why they're throwing names at you, because your demonstration of truth fractures and destroys elements of their belief systems. And instead of having the integrity to change those beliefs, it's easier to just diminish what you're doing so that they feel more comfortable. This is how it's not your issue. You're just a mirror towards their own existential dread. We love that for them. However, don't make that your problem. That's the whole lesson between this opposition as we phase out the old world. As you see people champion and pioneer ideologies from this old world thinking that are in real time not working, getting them killed, as well as also exposing the dangers and also the hypocrisy in such ideologies and in such philosophies and in such beliefs. This is happening to everybody. This is happening to everyone all over the world, regardless of what you believe and what your side is, what you affiliate with. Those, regardless of who you are, that have integrity of their beliefs are the only ones that are going to make it into this next round of the Hunger Games. And those who don't are going to be phased out with the rest of everything. You guys stay blessed as always. As we conclude this transit once again, this is going to challenge now how your current mindset must match these new habits, and your habits you're developing must match very unconventional truths and realizations. The last thing I'm going to say about this transit is Mercury is conjuncting the sun. We're now, over the next couple of days, going to have crazy epiphanies because our brain processing with Mercury has caught up with the sun, which is our conscious awareness. And this is going to, in alignment of us thinking and being aware of what we're analyzing, coming into major clarity of the facts and how everything that's going down is going down. It's going to prepare us for the opposition to Saturn next week when we have the final new moon in Virgo. And it's not a coincidence that Mercury ruled Gemini is conjuncting the sun in Virgo in its dignity while the moon goes into Gemini, giving us mutual receptivity of clearing out our brain and consciousness and analyzing and processing the actual details, while the moon gives us an intellectual understanding of what to think about how we're analyzing. So prepare for profound synchronistic revelations that are very clear, detailed, and rigid. And that's why you have to be very careful about others who will use this, shift the perspective to steer very dangerous, radical narratives. And I'm not going to say all of them are lies. Just use discernment and make sure that what someone is trying to steer you could be based on facts and reality and not theories, because some of them are dope, but they're going to be a lot of, all right. And relative to the forces at play that I think stem beyond just flesh and blood, there may be push to kind of stir national and global conflict, and you want to be mindful on how you help, hurt, or prevent that. Other than that, you can look forward to beginning to complete this development on your behavior and your habits, and to understand the truth of what supernatural techniques you are completing and the experience of that before we move forward with that when the moon goes into Cancer. You guys stay blessed as always, and until next time, peace.